Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to talk about something really difficult, estrangement, and what to do when your child doesn't want to have anything to do with you anymore, whether that's talking to you or seeing you or whatever it may be. And to do that, I'm going to get very vulnerable about my own life situation. And in my experience as a parent, I've had periods where all of my children I've been estranged from. Right now, there are two of them that don't want to have anything to do with me. And I'm doing this because of what I believe in. What I really teach are truth and responsibility, and that requires being vulnerable and sharing truth and owning responsibility. Now, for some people, this is uncomfortable when I do this. They don't like me bringing up such personal information. One, they expect me or want me to be perfect and have everything figured out, and I can appreciate that. I'd like to be perfect too and have all the answers to everything, but I don't. And I think it's imperative for someone in my position to be honest about that. That's one thing. Also, some people don't like it because it means I might bring up other people involved in the situation, and they don't think that's right. And I could see that. Again, my philosophy is truth and responsibility. And this is something I had to learn in my own journey, that when people would say things about me from my past that I didn't like, my mentor taught me, well, wait a minute, Kenny, do you realize you're responsible? If you don't want people to know these things about you, you could have made a different choice. And so if the other people involved in my situations don't like that inadvertently their decisions might be discussed, well, they could have chosen a different choice. See, we're all responsible personally. And that's the reason I do this is we all struggle because most teachers and the world in general advocates that we live in self-deception, blame, and projection. We put everything else on somebody else. We play the victim. That's how we're rewarded. We don't teach truth and responsibility, and there's and that's why everyone struggles. And so that's why I'm doing this, and you may disagree with all of those points, and I want you to disagree if you do. I want you to hold on to your reality and what works best for you. And I'm just teaching from the platform that I've decided has the most people will benefit from, and it brings the most joy into people's lives. The other way doesn't work, and that's why I've chosen this. So it's what works for me. So if you are going through this and you're estranged from your child, it's been my experience there are kind of three situations where this happens. There's the single parent who is just overwhelmed. There is the divorced or separated, the dissolved relationship. And usually, like say you're the estranged one and you're blaming the other side. Or there is the intact relationship and there is blame going on about the other parent. In my experience, there are always subtleties, but it's generally these situations that's where the estrangement comes from. And what I've noticed is the primary problem is the blaming of the other parent. Now, I'm not going to deny that the other parent isn't a problem, but there's some fundamental truths we must take responsibility for that then put the responsibility back on us, and this is why we are estranged. We are not taking responsibility for our part, not enough. We may say, yeah, I take responsibility, Kenny, but you're estranged because you haven't taken enough responsibility, okay? And that's just tough to say. Like, this is gonna be a tough video for you because truth is difficult to absorb when you have a world advocating the opposite. And responsibility is difficult to absorb when we haven't been shown how. But I'm really encouraging you to stick with me till the end. And that's also why I'm going to use my story, because when you see that it's possible, it gives you hope. And that's really what I want you to get from this video is hope, not judgment, not blame or criticism. What I'm really teaching in this video is tremendous hope and tremendous opportunity. Now, to get there, to live in that hope and live in that opportunity, we are going to have to go headfirst into some really dark, difficult truths and responsibilities which create feelings we're not used to navigating. And this is the deep granularity of emotional mastery, which I'm trying to impart, and that's why I'm doing this. So do you see the overwhelming responsibility if you're a single parent, except in the rare case where somebody forced themselves on you? You picked that person, and they may have disappeared and they've had nothing to do with this child, and you were overwhelmed by the responsibility, did the best you could, but you made a lot. Obviously, we all make mistakes, and your child's estranged from you. Part of the problem is the other parent was never there. You're not responsible for that. And you are responsible for picking and conceiving a child with somebody that would not be around. I know you're thinking, well, I didn't know that would happen, and that's true. But do you see why that's true? Because we didn't take responsibility to learn how relationships happen, how attractions happen. We are responsible. We can't outrun those truths. And so if we are the sole parent, we have to take ownership. I played a huge part in picking a partner that would end up forcing me to raise this child on my own. That's me. That's a lot of me. Same holds true if you have, a relationship that's ended. And this other one is really toxic. And I would agree, they're probably 1,000 times more imperfect than you and more destructive than you. But the lack of recognition that if they are that destructive, that's a mirror into how dysfunctional my views of relationships and attraction are. That I picked that and was attracted and allowed that near me. And again, I didn't take responsibility to go learn about attraction, go learn about relationships. To learn that we become our childhood. That's why we picked this. I didn't know that. Like, there's all these things. I'm responsible for that. That's truth. I have to let that in. Or number 3, that I'm in a relationship. And maybe both of us are just completely astonished that our child or children don't want to have anything to do with us. And if that's the case, there is a level of detachment from truth and reality that is so far beyond comprehension. Those are 2 parents that must see themselves as gods, because they can't see that they're imperfect and they can't even acknowledge and admit their mistakes, or they may say they haven't, but they aren't that big of a deal. They're minimizing them. And that's the problem. This is really hard to say, and I'm doing my best to be really kind and empathetic about this, and I know I'm not going to do this as well as I would like. It's tough to say truth from a place that doesn't hurt. And that's what I'm trying to do here. But do you realize if a child runs away, what that says? That the one place where they are supposed to have complete safety, the home, their mother and father, they deem that so unsafe that they leave it. That's what the child who's running away is saying, directly or indirectly. That's a reflection on us. Now, not completely. We aren't solely responsible. And I'm not saying we should shame ourselves and belittle ourselves for these imperfections, but we do need to take ownership. And here's part of why. Do you realize also that a child leaves because they don't know how to resolve conflict? Well, who teaches them how to resolve conflict? Us. If you're a single parent, you obviously didn't know how to resolve conflict. If you're in a divorced relationship or a relationship that's ended, you didn't know how to resolve it. If you're in a marriage where you don't see what's going on between the 2 of you and your children, you aren't present enough to resolve conflict. Now, this is where I use my life story to lighten the burden, because that's what I want to do, is let you know, because it can be hard as you're looking at this and you're probably fighting letting in the truth, but you also don't quite know where to look. So I want I guess I don't consider it throwing myself under the bus. I just consider it truth and responsibility. But I had a marriage where I was physically and verbally abused, and I didn't leave. What message am I sending? The children and the child that won't speak to me comes from that. I couldn't protect myself. So how would my child know how to protect themselves? I didn't model it, right? I didn't know how to resolve conflict. I didn't stand up for myself. This person also was incredibly controlling of me and wouldn't allow me to parent. Now, do you see the word choice? I chose those words specifically. Controlling of me, wouldn't allow me to parent. Do you see how that's the victim role and places responsibility on the other person? Nobody controls me unless I allow it. Nobody stops me from parenting unless I allow it. See, I didn't know how not to allow that. And so my child who doesn't speak to me doesn't know either. It was never modeled. I'm responsible for that. That's truth. The only way I knew how to defend myself was to be passive aggressive. Well, what is somebody who leaves? Because this child has not told me why they won't speak to me. Well, that's passive aggressive. Well, where'd they learn that? Me. I didn't know how to defend myself. So I'd make snarky comments. I'll never forget one of the times was I was holding this child who doesn't speak to me. I was holding them. And their mother, I said, "You're a drug addict," which is true. And they hit me while I was holding the child. Well, instead of getting help, instead of leaving, do you see how passive aggressive my comment is? I'm not dealing with the situation. I'm not dealing with conflict. I'm initiating. I'm playing a part. I'm not condoning. No, I don't care what anyone says. It's not okay to respond the way she did. Like, don't misunderstand me. That's the people who want to stay the victim are going to try and justify, and go, well, what they did is worse. Well, maybe. Okay, you're right. But the problem you're having is you aren't seeing the part you played. And that's why I'm telling these stories. These aren't to throw my former partner under the bus and say they're terrible. We are equal. We are both perfectly imperfect. Neither one of us is demonstrating how to navigate conflict in a healthy way. She's doing it in her way, but I'm doing it in my way. Now, some people may judge and go, well, my way's better. And you may be saying that about yourself. Well, I don't know that that's true. All I know is both are imperfect, and that's what matters, not grading who's better than the other. Because I can't control them, but I can control me. And the only way this gets better is if I control me. And so my child is acting passively aggressively because right there in my arms got a great picture of what it looks like. I taught her that. I need to own that. We also went through 5 counselors during the marriage. Each time we'd go because I was the problem. And legitimately, I was passive aggressive. I was so immature and I had so many. I was such a little boy. That poor woman. I was such a little boy. I was in my 30s. No idea who I was, what I wanted. No, I had no clue how to navigate life. As a result of this marriage ending, I went back into counseling, but I got lucky. I finally got a good one. And as I told him, I don't know how to be a man. So I didn't know how to be a man, and I'm with this woman. All right, so we'd go into counseling, and there were some legitimate concerns, a lot of projection too. But we'd spend the first, 3 to 6 weeks fixing Kenny. Well, I would do the work. And after a period of time, the counselor would shift because they would notice things in my ex. And they'd bring that up. And always on the drive home, the ex say, I don't like this therapist. We need a new one. And so we'd move on to the next. There was no ability for them to take ownership of their part. Well, I allowed that. I didn't put my foot down. I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't know how to handle conflict. Well, neither do these children. That's why they're not around me. That's the part I play. I couldn't ask for my needs and wants. eventually the only way I can reconcile, this is how decrepit, should I call myself decrepit? No, I would just say really broken and imperfect. And just doing the best I could with the information. But our society doesn't teach this. We don't know. And so I'm not really to blame. It is sad and heartbreaking, but the only way I could end the relationship was to have an affair and do it in a way that I'd get caught. That was how I could say no. But it took me almost 10 years of nonstop poor treatment before I could even get to that place. See, my daughter saw, well, she wasn't alive for 10 years of it, but 6 years of, here's the model of how to handle relationship. I need to take responsibility for that. I picked her, and so did you. The thing to remember is our children become our emotional condition. If you don't know that, that's part of the problem. Parents, the second problem is parents drastically overestimate and overinflate how good they are as a parent. It's natural because we're all taught to deny the trauma we experienced as a child, how we brought all of that trauma into our adult relationships. We don't know that our adult relationships are just a reflection of our unhealed trauma in childhood. And if you don't know this, like, these aren't arguable facts. These are facts that are not arguable. The only reason you may have discomfort with them or disagree with them is because you don't, oh God, I see it. I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm trying to be honest and truthful. But if you disagree with it, it's just because you lack the information. It's like someone the other day was arguing with me that we think before we feel. Well, that's so wrong. We've known neuroscientifically we feel before we think, and she brought up a personal development program that's very popular. That's all based on thinking. Well, they're teaching a model that isn't even right. It's old science. But she believes in the model, and I don't want to strip her of her belief of this model. Like, they're trying to do great things, don't get me wrong, but it's just wrong. Every person I've ever met who's been through that program has limited success because they've never dealt with the underlying emotional conditions. They try and use thought on top of everything. Well, you can't. You have to heal the emotions. But their program doesn't teach that. It avoids it, and that's okay. You get great benefits from it, but she's not in reality. And so when I bring this stuff up, people that don't know it or get upset with me, it's because they're not in reality. They don't have the information. They haven't done what I always talk about. Go become an expert. None of us are taught how to be a parent. None of us are taught how to have a relationship. We are just winging it. Everything in life we go learn how to do. We're not allowed to drive. There are all these things. We have to satisfy these conditions. Like, imagine, I talk about this in my book, to cut somebody's hair, something that no matter how badly it gets butchered, grows back perfectly fine on its own. Like, we care more about our hair than we do learning about how to be a parent or how to fall in love and have a healthy relationship. The government demands we need a license to cut hair. Think of that. And then the denial comes up, and then the people listening, they don't do the work. They just, okay, watch a couple videos, but why aren't you on a daily basis studying, doing exercises? Like, that's what this requires. That's being responsible. And that's what's not happening in your relationship with your child. The irony in all of this is what is my job? And this, I get to this because this is your solution. I'm a father figure or a mother figure for everyone that watches me or hires me. Isn't that ironic? Like, I'm teaching them the things they didn't learn as a child. I'm teaching them how to heal what happened to them as a child. I'm nurturing them out of that state into adulthood. That's all this is. And why am I doing that? Because when I went into my counselor's office after allowing all of this behavior, I knew the ramifications on my children. And I still made a ton of mistakes. There was and still is so much to learn. And so since that moment, for 20 years, I've been dedicating myself to learn how to be a parent. And so what a lot of people don't know is this I may lose all my following now, but you know a big reason I do these videos is maybe someday my kids will want to know me. And here it is. Because the way things are now, I'm not in relationship, and most of their lives I haven't been, not from a lack of effort. I went bankrupt fighting for them. You know, I've done as many things as I can. But the secret is this. Remember what I said, our kids become our emotional condition. So I've spent 20 years working on my emotional condition, trying to be the father that they deserve, that I wasn't when they were kids, that I'm responsible for. I have spent my life trying to learn how to be the father I wasn't. And so I now have a career where I'm a father to everyone but them. Not everyone, but many people but them, and that's okay. The only thing I can control is me. And because I know scientifically that children become their parents' emotional condition, the best thing I can do is grow. Children, we model our parents. Right? And so this is part, I didn't say this in the beginning, but this is part of why I share my story. I'm modeling for those who follow me and see me, whether they recognize it or not. Those who follow me do see me as in a parental role. I'm modeling what it's like. I'm modeling vulnerability. I'm modeling transparency. I'm modeling truth. I'm modeling responsibility. I don't do it perfectly. You see throughout my videos, I screw up all the time, and I say things that are incorrect and, misspeak, and I leave them in to show that it's okay to be perfectly imperfect. That the key, remember, our kids don't know how to handle conflict. We need to learn to handle conflict inside ourselves. And so I put this material out, and many people don't like what I have to say. And it is not comfortable to deal with that conflict, but I put myself in that position because why? I need to model for my children what I didn't model for them when they were children. I am forcing myself into an incredibly uncomfortable position where my imperfections get noticed and seen, and all my skeletons come out, so that I can learn to navigate the conflict I avoided, which created my part in the estrangement that we have. Is there an aspect that their parent? Of course there is, but I can't control that. My kids deserve at least one parent who's willing to do the work. That's my job. That's my responsibility as a parent, and it's yours as well. And so if you are not working on becoming an expert in healing the pain from the past, from your own childhood, of learning about how to be a parent, how to be vulnerable, how to be transparent, how to take ownership and face your denial and self-deception on a minute-by-minute basis, you are playing a part in the continued estrangement. You are responsible for that. And I say that with love. Truth is love. And that's what I hope you hear, is not condemnation, not judgment, but I'm trying to model what love is, that we speak to each other with truth. We are all imperfect. And here's the thing. Ultimately, our kids are hurting from the estrangement just as much as we are. And they feel tremendous guilt and shame over it. But they're stuck in their denial and their shame, because ultimately they can't forgive themselves for the part they're playing. They're immature. Immature in part because we didn't teach them about how healthy relationships work. So they're just doing the best they can too. But deep down, as they mature, they'll feel it. They'll recognize that much of the estrangement is a lack of forgiveness for themselves and how they made snap judgments that were less than perfect. And they can't see that now. And so it is our job to show them what self-forgiveness looks like, so that we open the door for the day that they're ready, they know what it looks like. And that's why I do this. is I'm trying to model, look, I've been, in many cases, an incredibly wonderful parent, and in many cases, an awful parent. I have been perfect and imperfect, and both are okay. I can forgive myself because I'm doing the work. That's where self-forgiveness comes from, is have you put a plan in place and taken action on healing the pain that you played a part in creating? If you aren't doing those first two, you can't let go. And that's become my life, is a teaching and learning processes and plans and then sharing them with others and working on them with it. Like all of this stuff I do on myself and then I teach it. I'm not saying you have to do it that way, but you have to find your own method, your own way of modeling the forgiveness. And so to solve this problem with your children requires three things. You need to develop the skills and tools you were never taught about relationships and parenting and healing the pain from your past. You will not create a truly healthy, loving, attached relationship with your children unless you go learn how to do that. And none of us have learned. I don't care who you are and what you used to think your childhood was like. It wasn't what you're capable of. We are capable of so much more than we achieve. And so we must get into reality of that truth. Number two, we need community and connections. We need to learn how to be vulnerable and develop relationships, because the models we saw for relationships were obviously perfectly imperfect and dysfunctional, because we then recreated those in our own relationships with adults and our child. We need to put ourselves in a position to repeatedly hit up against that wall and fail miserably and learn the process of developing relationship. It is a learned skill. It is not innate in us. Because of the worst day cycle, because we are all so dysfunctional, we have to go learn how to heal all this and develop relationship. And finally, we need a guide and mentor. We need the parent we've never had. Now, all of us require somebody to model what it looks like to be the adult in the relationship, to be the parent in the relationship, to be that for ourselves and for our children. And we don't know how to do that. That is obvious because we are estranged from our child. We played a part in that, and we must focus on the part we can control. Now, if you don't know where that is, I offer all three. My complete emotional mastery teaches you the skills and tools to heal the pain from the past, to become the adult you need to be, develop the relationship skills you were never taught, and to forgive yourself for being perfectly imperfect. I have my Perfectly Imperfect private group, which is all about community and connection, and you get coaching from me as well. And that teaches you to get in there, be vulnerable, be transparent in front of other people, share your skeletons on a smaller, you don't have to get on YouTube and Facebook and share it like I do. And I don't know if what I'm doing is the right way. It seems like, at least where I am in my journey right now, it seems like the best way for me to do it. I may grow into something else and go, wow, that was very childish. I don't know. Right now it seems very adult and healthy, but I'm open to the possibility that everything I'm doing is wrong. I am always open to the possibility that I am never, ever right, because that allows for relationship. If I pigeonhole myself and say, only I have the right way, which you've seen me say many times, showing my dysfunction, just ignore me and go, oh, there's Kenny the child, the broken little child, demanding to be seen and heard, and he feels so insecure and insignificant, he has to be right. Just humor me in those moments. And I don't know, you don't have to forgive me, but just recognize the truth. And recognize that when I get back into the adult me, I see it too, and I take responsibility for how the child in me pops up. But we do need that connection and that intimacy. And then finally, I offer the one-on-one coaching. I mentor you, and that's what you can do that by watching my videos somewhat. Ultimately, it's a process that needs to be, it's a relationship. We need to form a relationship with a guide and mentor, and you can't do that through watching videos. That's a lived experience. Now, you don't have to, I may not be the one that you want, but find one. You need one. You need that parent figure you didn't have that left the hole so that you can learn how to be the parent for yourself. That's what I've done. I reconciled how my parents couldn't be there until I could be there for myself. And then I was able to let them go and love them for what they did bring me. Because look at it. Do you realize? As so-called bad as my parents were, they were just perfectly imperfect. But all of the pain I have suffered at their hands has also made me a pretty damn good parent. Because that's what I do. You can call me a life coach or emotional mental, all these different things, but I'm just a parent. In the first place is I learned how to parent me. And when I do that, when I model what that's like, I give the best chance for me to resurrect the relationships with my children. And I hope I do that. I hope that happens, and if it doesn't happen, then I know there's a bigger reason for it. And they're doing what's best for them. But my responsibility as their father is to be an expert in trying to heal that. And that's all I'm encouraging you to do. Go become an expert. Learn the skills and tools. Be part of a group that fosters connection and intimacy and vulnerability, and work with a mentor. And that's the best thing you can do to heal this dynamic. So if you know somebody who's estranged from their child and you think this will help them, please help them. If you want me to teach you the skills and tools and be a part of my group or be your mentor, I will leave you the links and you can investigate them and get in touch with me personally. So just remember, forgive yourself. This is the process to self-forgiveness. And as you work through it, I promise you will find peace and you will find a level of connection with yourself and others that brings you the peace we all deserve. So enjoy that journey.